Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we have Bonnie Jean Mitchell back with us for part two. For those who haven't had the chance to view the part one interview, the link will be in the description box below. Now, Bonnie Jean Mitchell is the founder of alienabductionhelp.com and co-founder of awakenvideo.org. She is a researcher, author, and lifelong contactee. Along with her husband, John, Bonnie discovered a psychological and digital form of mnemonic mind control on electronic devices that can literally reprogram the human mind. For over 20 years, she's given advice to those living through paranormal and metaphysical experiences. She wrote the book Journey with the Star People in 2005. She published her new book, The Shift, in 2021, in synchronicity with the actual spiritual shift and ascension of mankind. This latest book is the handbook for anyone who needs guidance through the current paradigm shift in consciousness. So, Bonnie, thank you so much for coming on for part two.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, we talked about a lot of your experiences last time, but there's again, new stuff that's been happening to you. Now, do you want to get into that?
Yeah, definitely. I've had a lot of experiences throughout my lifetime. And our first interview, I focused quite a bit on my early 20s and everything that I was learning with the Star People. So I want to start with, this is actually an early one, but actually before I was born. It's about my mom and dad and when they were dating and living in New York. My mom's from Queens and my dad's from Long Island. And when they were dating, they were going out to Fire Island, which is this, I think it's a park. It's almost like a wildlife refuge. And it's this beautiful place off the coast of New York City. So one night, my mom and dad were out there on Fire Island on the beach having a very romantic evening. And they saw a UFO. And they described it as a red light in the distance that was kind of hovering there for a while, and they watched it, and it came over closer to them and was just hovering there, and it was very unusual. And they saw it do some really crazy like zigzag movements and then shoot off. And there were a lot of people there on Fire Island that night, people having parties and stuff, and the famous singer Diana Ross was there, and she also saw the UFO. So it was a big deal the next day. It was in newspapers and everything. And so that is the night that I was conceived. And, when me and my mom talk about it, she's, she looks at me in all seriousness and she says, maybe that's where you came from. So, that was the beginning for me. And so I want to talk about an experience I had where I met my star mother. So these beings that have been working with me and teaching me my entire life, I call them my family, and I think they're Pleiadian. And so this lovely lady is my mother, my star mother. She is Pleiadian, and she's probably about 6 foot tall. She has rather white skin and pretty thin. But I really think she's a hybrid. She has a lot of human in her. And so the shape of her, size of her head is pretty normal, like human size. And she has blue eyes. She has short blonde hair, like really light colored blonde hair. And so I want to tell you the story of when I first met her. I was first introduced to her. I was about 24 years old. So that night was normal. I went to bed, went to sleep, and I woke up and I was walking out the back door of my house. And I assume I was out of body, but it felt so real to me. I was really awake and aware. Walking through my backyard, through the grass. It was wet with the dew and it was cold. I didn't have any shoes on. So everything was very vivid and, lucid. So I see in the backyard is a craft floating there above the tree line, and it's a saucer, silver saucer shape, and I guess it was about 40 foot in diameter. And then I see over in the distance, a couple of fields over, a couple of houses over, is another exact looking craft, And there were actually two humans, like a young couple, were outside standing there looking at it. So they were staring at it. They didn't look over at me. So I had this craft, floating above tree line in my backyard, and I had a good feeling. I knew it was my star family. I felt real comfortable with it. So I started walking through the backyard towards the craft. And as I got closer to the craft, it would descend to the ground. And a door opened up out of the bottom, like they were just waiting for me to come in. And then I had this little mischievous thought. I was like, oh, well, I noticed that as I moved, the craft moved. I was like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I back up a little bit. So I like walking backwards. And as I'm doing that, the craft's going back up into the air, the door closes. I'm like, oh, that's cool, So then I walk forward, the craft comes down, the door opens. I did this, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. And so then I get this telepathic message in my head, and they're like, Bonnie, we can only let you on the craft. And I was just laughing because there's nobody else out there. I was like, nobody's going to run into the spaceship, But anyway, I'll save you the grief. So I walked forward, the door opened, and I walked in. And so I'm inside now, and the door is coming up, and it closes. And I'm in the bottom level of this craft in a room, and there's 2 star people in there. The weird thing right away was that I noticed, yeah, I'm inside of a craft. The walls are curved and it's silver metal. That's normal. But it looked strangely like a garage, like a human garage. There was a trash can. There were a couple of like gardening tools, like I think a shovel and a rake or something hanging on the wall. And then I noticed a desk, like a wooden writing desk for a human. And it looked like it had a bunch of papers piled up on top of it. And so I didn't really hardly even say hi to the star people. I was like, oh, it's my family, I know who they are. I really wanted to see this desk and whatever paperwork was sitting on top of it. So I sat down there at the desk and realized these are all photographs. And I see pictures of me from when I was a baby and when I was really little. And so I kind of had a bad reaction to that. So my first thought was, did they steal these photos from my parents? And my second thought was, if they didn't steal them, then was I with the star people and they took pictures of me? That's a lot of pictures. I must have spent a lot of time with them. Like, where were my parents? And I felt like, almost like they were kidnapping me as a baby or something. So I was having like a kind of a rebellious kind of moment there. And so I got up and I walked over to the 2 star people, and I was kind of pissed off, and I said, what are you doing with those pictures of me? And they didn't answer me. I think they didn't know what to do. Then I went back for a minute to the desk and I looked at more pictures, and lo and behold, they had pictures of my parents when they were babies. I was like, okay, this is crazy. And so I wasn't being very open-minded at that moment. I was a little pissed off. So I got up and I walked back to the 2 star people. And this was just kind of bad timing. So there was a male and a female. The male star person was a bit younger and a bit shorter. He's probably like 5 foot tall. And then this other one was my star mother, who I described to you. I was like, no, that's not my mother. Like, I already have a mother, my biological human Earth mother. And so I kind of stuck my nose up in the air at her and walked away and went back to the desk. And when I did that, she kind of dejectedly hung her head down, and I could feel empathically they were really disappointed. And they ended up walking up a flight of stairs, which was also a weird human kind of thing. A regular flight of stairs. They walked up to the next room above that. And I was sitting there at the desk looking at the photos, and I could feel them up on the next level. There were about 10 of them up there observing me, and they had done that quite a lot. And so when I was done looking at the pictures, I just got up and I let myself out and I left. So my first meeting with my star mother did not go well. And But since then, I have seen her many, many times since then, and we now have a good connection with each other. So there's another experience that happened with my star mother in 2008. And I had already seen her a number of times. But this one is really, really interesting because I got to see the craft physically. And then that night I went on board the same craft with my star mother. So that night I went outside to look at the stars. I was talking to my star family and I saw this glowing ring in the sky, which I could see was hollow in the center because I could see stars through it. And then the light pulsed and filled the center. So it became what looked like a solid craft, like a solid white saucer. But then the light quickly like imploded on itself and just went out. It was gone. And then I saw another white light streak by. Mm-hmm. And so I got the impression that these three lights that I saw could very well be the same craft. And I also knew that there's a chance if I went inside and went back to sleep, I might be able to meet with them. So that's what I did. I went back in the house, went back to bed. Next thing I know, I'm waking up and I'm in the craft, in the same craft that I saw in the sky. I'm now inside and my star mother was there. And so the inside of this was curved walls and like a silvery metal, but also this white glow that had been part of the ring was inside the room. It was just kind of glowing white. It made it look very etheric. And so with me in this room were about 20 human students in the Star People School. And we all knew that we were going to be taking a psychic test. And so in the center of this room was a column that came down from the ceiling to the floor. And about midway up or so was like an opening in the column. And the top part had a light shining down and the bottom part was just a shelf. And so sitting on this shelf was like a white oblong tray that had little white pieces on it. I think maybe they were stones or something. They were all identical. But the idea was for everybody taking this test to arrange these objects in the correct pattern, whatever that was. We weren't told, we just had to know it. And so we all did the test and I did it and I got them right. And so I got to meet with my star mother. She came out, she said, "Congratulations, you passed the test." And that was always great because we're all trying to do good and go up to the next level, you know. And then I got to actually fly with my star mother right there in that room. We started flying, we were like flying around together towards the ceiling of this room. It was really tall. And I remember thinking how great it was to find somebody with my same flying skill, because even though people go out of body all the time, not everybody knows how to fly. I mean, even when you're out of body, there's people who just, they haven't learned it yet, you know. And I actually teach people how to fly sometimes when I'm out of body. So I've been in contact with my star mother a lot over the years, and she's helped me prepare for the shift and everything that we're going through now. And so that was a cool experience because I got to see the ship physically, and then I got to go on the ship when I went out of body. And I wanted to say that there seems to be this flowing consciousness, like a flowing river of consciousness that we are in. And it doesn't matter if you're awake or asleep, or if, you know, if it's daytime in the physical world or if it's nighttime and you're out of body. It's like it just keeps flowing. And so an example of this is like precognitive dreams. So I've noticed more recently that, you know, precognitive dreams are great, and you might have one that doesn't come true for 10 years or something, and I've had those. But I'm talking about like just regular, normal, happens all the time. I'll dream about something, the next day it might happen or something related to it. And this plays out over like the next 2 or 3 days. And it could be in my dreams or in waking life, but it's the same pattern playing out. And it doesn't matter if you're awake or asleep. So there's like this flow of awareness, and it's kind of what happens with me a lot, like, seeing the craft outside before I go to bed and then going on the craft after I go to sleep. It just continues. So I just wanted to make that point. So another really interesting thing that has happened is going out of body. And after I go out of body, sometimes I stay in my room and I'll look at my body that's laying in the bed, the physical body. And so I did this one time, and I was checking the body out, and from head to toe, I noticed, first of all, that it looked a lot bigger or a lot taller than I expected it to be. And maybe it just looks that way when you're out of body and you don't realize how big you are. But anyway, I looked into the eyes of my body, and they look kind of empty because I wasn't in there. It was like just looking at the empty vessel, kind of. But this really crazy thing happened. My body screamed, like it yelled out because it was afraid. And I backed off, like I am out of body in my etheric form, looking at my physical body, and it just screamed out in fear because of me. And I backed up, and I'm like, oh, it's okay. Don't be afraid. It's just me. That's why I stood there just looking at the physical body laying there, thinking, wow, it's like, even though I'm not in my body, it still functions. Like there's all these automatic functions that happen in the body, like the heartbeat and your breathing and all of this. And so I realized that even though I wasn't in my body, the body still can somehow think for itself and make judgments. And so it saw me and actually got scared. So that was a pretty wild experience. And then another time, it wasn't too long after that, I went out of body again. And I walked into my living room, and I saw myself standing in the living room. And I don't know if it was my physical body or what form this was, but I was out of body and I met myself. It was like looking in a mirror. And every time I moved, this body moved. It was copying me, but it was also playing a game with me because it was kind of started smiling a little bit. Like I knew it was messing around with me. So I don't know exactly what that was, but there's just so much more involved with, we think we have an idea of what's going on. Like, oh, this is my physical body and this is my astral body. And it just seems to be way more complicated than that,
Yeah, I thought our self-awareness was the fact that the soul was in the body, and I always thought that the soul was the foundation energy of bringing the body to life. And
Yeah.
But what you're saying is really throws everything out of whack.
Yeah, and there's another experience related to that, which only happened a couple of years ago. So I went to sleep one night, and then I went out of body. I was in my room, and I didn't even look at my body actually laying in the bed. I wanted to go flying, so I went straight out through the ceiling. And I felt myself going through the density of the material of the ceiling and everything. And I went out, and I love to fly, and I love to go straight up because I want to know what's up there. So I was flying straight up in the sky, and what seemed like an air current, a really strong air current, caught me. And it was taking me pretty fast, and I pulled myself out of it because I got a little frightened. And I remembered that this had happened before. And I don't know what it is or where it's going to take me, but I was like, oh, what the heck, I'll just go. So I jumped back into it, and it took me really fast, like through a bunch of clouds and stuff, but we're still on Earth. I end up going into the bedroom of somebody else who is out of their body. And I see their body laying on the floor. And I'm automatically like, oh, I better make sure they're okay. And I somehow felt like a responsibility for this vessel. And I went over to it, and this was a lady who looked like she was from Taiwan. And her body was on the floor. I don't know why she ended up going out of body on the floor, but it was laying on the floor. And I went over and I examined it, and it looked fine. And I looked into the eyes, and there was nobody in there. It was just empty. And amazingly, I realized that somehow I felt like this was my body, like I had every right to go inside of this body if I wanted to and play the part of this character. And I knew that when I went into the body, I would know the language and the culture and everything that I needed to know. But at the time, I knew that in the other room was this lady's mother and sister. And I didn't want to get into that. You know, I didn't want to go into her body and then suddenly have to meet the mother and the sister and do that. So I didn't go into that body. But it was really interesting how I felt this like a responsibility for the safety of this vessel or something. It was really interesting. But I decided to leave. So I flew back out the window and I went back to my house, back into my body. So that was really, you know, something that really makes you think about the way things really are. And so this next one I want to talk about. I sent you 3 pictures. I think I called them purple nets. So these 3 pictures go with this story about the nets. In my book, I think I called it Holy Crap. So as usual, that night, I go to sleep. And I assume I went out of body. I was very awake and aware. I wake up in this room with about 10 other humans. And we're sitting at a long rectangular table, which is wooden. And the room is like a human room. It looks like a library. There's a bunch of bookshelves with books all over them. And there's these big windows. And I can see what looks like a city out there. It looks like we're in a skyscraper, like in the very top of a skyscraper. But I didn't really go to the windows to examine it. So I'm sitting there at this table, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm in a fake scenario. So, you know, the Star people do this thing where they put contactees through tests. And they sometimes create like a virtual reality, like a holographic room or something, and they put you inside of it, and they create a scene that you have to work your way through. And they put me through so many of these that I started to realize that they were not real, that they were like a movie set, and I was playing a character kind of, and they were observing me. They wanted to see, you know, how I would react. What would I do in the situation? So they put me through these fake scenarios for a long time. And when I first started, I thought they were real. And I would be, you know, they put me in a situation where I had to, let's say, defend myself against some type of attacker. And at first I didn't know they were real, and it was pretty, you know, pretty intense. But after many years of doing it, I started to notice that something was off, like the lighting wasn't right. Like if they had me outside and it was supposed to be the sun shining, something about it didn't look right. It wasn't the right color. The light wasn't falling right. The angles and the shadows weren't right. And so I started to figure out, this is not real life. This is some kind of a hologram or something. And when I started to see that, I refused to take part in it. I said, all right, I'm not doing this. I just sit there and I wouldn't do anything. And they'd end it. They'd take me out of it. And so they had to find like different ways of giving me this psychic testing and stuff. So this experience with the purple nets is kind of like that. So I'm in this room sitting at this wooden rectangular table with about 10 people. And something about it seems a little like I've been there before. And I'm wondering if it's another one of their fake scenarios. So the fellow next to me starts to get angry. And he starts yelling at the guy standing across from him at the table. And he stands up and pulls out a gun and points it at the other fellow. Then the other fellow stands up and points a gun at him. And then they point the gun at me. I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm like, now I know. This is not real. I know this is not real. I was like, just calm down, put the gun away, do not shoot me, or I'm going to leave. That's what I said. I'm going to leave. So they didn't even reply to me. I was like, okay, obviously, this is not real. This is another fake test, and I don't want to do it. So I got up from the table and I went to these double doors, opened the doors and saw a hallway. Then I remembered that I'd been there before. They put me through this, tried to put me through it before, and I wouldn't do it, apparently. I thought, okay, last time I was here, I went to the right down the hallway. This time I'm going to go left. So I went left, and there was a doorway at the end of the hallway. And I opened the door, and it was another human-looking room, like a library. And there were like 3 or 4 humans. I don't know if they're real or not, but they were in there. They didn't see me. They didn't pay attention to me. And I really just wanted to get out of there. So I started flying. I went up to the ceiling, and there was a little window, like a long, thin rectangular window. And I went through it. It was open, and I went through it. Went through another little library room, same thing, and went through another window. And then I came what was supposed to be outside. This is where it starts to get pretty weird, because I could see a landscape, like some hills and trees and some houses in the distance, and some houses that were right next to me. I was still flying, but it was pretty dark. And I recognized this dark void because I know that this is an unmanifested place. And as I looked at these houses that I was flying over, I noticed that they weren't done. They weren't done creating them. Some of them I could see through, and there were only half buildings. And so I realized immediately that I was in a place that was not fully manifested, and whatever I thought about was going to manifest. I was like, oh God, think happy thoughts, think happy thoughts. And so I started thinking about, things that made me happy. Like I thought about Christmas time and pretty lights. And I thought about when I was a teenager and I was a majorette, like in the marching band. And all this stuff started appearing. I was creating it. But I also knew at the same time that I didn't know how to do it very well. I wasn't ready to manifest an entire world yet by myself. And I knew that I could only keep this up for so long, my focus on happiness, before I have a bad thought come in or something, and that would not be good. So I was still flying, right? And I'm like, I just want to get out of here. So I tried to go straight up, and I hit the ceiling again, even though I was supposed to be outside. Then I looked over in the distance again to the landscape, and I saw a purple net in the landscape. And then I quickly spun my head to the other side and looked that way, or in that direction, another purple net. And then realized in front of me and behind me also purple nets. I was in like a long rectangular room that was enclosed by purple nets. And that made me wonder about the real world that we live in. And is that also a fake simulation? So I wanted to get out of there, and I flew really fast. I was bumping into the ceiling outside, and I came to this to the end of the room where the purple net was. And luckily the net was kind of sagging down a little bit off the ceiling, and I'm able to go through the top of it into the next room. And in this room was pure white. It was a smallish room, also enclosed with purple nets. And I was still near the ceiling flying. So I looked down, and below me were two very tall star people who could have been like 15 or 20 foot tall. And they were kind of corralling these smaller entities. I figured there was maybe about 20 of these smaller entities, which I could not see them. They look like kind of white amorphous blobs to me. And I got the impression that I could not perceive them because I'd never seen them before. I didn't know what I was looking at. That might have been the reason. But I think there were like 5 different types of beings there that these 2 tall star people were working with. And these beings started screaming because they saw me flying and they got scared of me. And I was like, oh God, I got to get out of here. So I keep going, right? So once again, I come to the net that's sagging from the ceiling and I go through it. So this was like the last room. It was almost like their storage area or something. There were purple nets just hanging everywhere, like their net storage area or something. And this very freaky looking star person comes at me, like flying towards me. He's hanging onto a rope and he's flying at me on the rope. And I guess he can't fly. I don't know. But he looked terrible. He looked like Frankenstein or something. His face was like sewn together. He looked like, I call him a Frankenstein ragdoll, like very, very trippy looking. And he comes up to me, he's like getting pretty close to me, and he says loud and clear, Bonnie, I'm sorry, but you've gone too far again. And he's like gonna grab me, and I knew that he wanted to take me back to the beginning, to the first room, to that library room, to the other 10 people sitting at the table. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna let him touch me. I was like, no, that's okay. I'll just go back where I came from. And I jetted off, flying back in the direction I came from. I went back through the room with the giant star people and these other entities. But since in that short amount of time, they had put a net up on the ceiling to protect those entities down there from me. So I flew, and they couldn't see me then because there was a net there. So I flew back through there. So I ended up pretty fast waking up in my bed. It was still nighttime. I woke up in my physical body and I thought about everything that happened. And I knew from past experience that what was probably going to happen was they were going to give me a little lecture, about how I'm supposed to do this lesson. There's a right way to go through the lesson, and I wasn't doing it. I figured they'd give me a little talking to, and then they'd put me back in the fake scenario. So I did fall back to sleep. I woke up back in the library room with 10 brand new people. So if I did have that talking to, I don't remember it, but I was back in the same library room again. And these were 10 completely new people, but they weren't real humans. They were just like part of the movie set, And so I was like, I'm just not going to do it. And so I got up and I walked back to the double doors, and they had changed the hallway. A hallway wasn't there anymore. There was a different room there, and my bed was there, and all my comfy blankets and my stuffed animals and my stuffed owl was there. And I sat down on my bed, and I kind of got distracted and forgot about the whole fake scenario thing, and ended up, waking up in my physical body again. But and as I was waking up in the morning, I had so much information just going through my head about what I had just seen. And it's like a life-changing event where I managed to pick up a lot of information. I don't know if they expected me to do that or not, but I learned a lot about our reality that we live in daily. Is this also part of their fake scenario? You know, because there's so many ideas and offshoots through this. But you know, like Dolores Cannon says that these star people are the custodians of this place. And also, you know, people who take DMT, they see the machine elves, who are also the caretakers of this place, and they look very much like the star people. So I'm just wondering about all these things, like what is reality, and you know, everything that we experience. Like for me, all of it's real. You know, it's all valid. I mean to say, you know, all the experiences that we have, they're all valid. And you know, our pineal glands actually release DMT naturally. Not huge amounts of it, little bits, but it does make me wonder about my third eye, my pineal gland, and DMT. And has this been helping me my entire life to actually meet with the star people? It could be. Well, that was in 2013 that happened. So it basically just opened my eyes for me, and I just gained a lot of insight from it. And I mean, my whole lifetime of experience with the star people has progressed and changed and kind of morphed into what it is now. Yeah, but that's one of my questions I'm working on is, you know, reality. What is it really? And so something else that I want to talk about is this other incredible experience that happened in 2018. So, you know, the star people do this thing. Sometimes they'll look into your eyes and they can calm you down if you're scared, or they might, you know, be able to make you go to sleep. They have this technique of, people say when they look into their eyes, it's like looking into eternity, or something, like looking into the depths of the universe, you know. So so in 2018, I had this experience. Went to sleep at night. I woke up and I was walking down a hallway that was kind of a curving hallway. And I didn't see anybody at first. I did feel like the star people were near, but I didn't see anybody. So I walk into this larger open room and I saw two humans sitting there, and they were both asleep. And there were like 3 wooden chairs sitting together. And I thought, oh, well, I'll go sit with them. I'll go sit in the middle chair, because on one end was a sleeping man, the other end was a sleeping woman. And I went and I sat in the chair between them. And I was feeling very happy and, you know, feeling just comfortable with the whole situation. And when I sat down, I realized there was a star person behind me. She had been following me down the hallway. And she was very unique looking. She was so big, like her bone structure or whatever it was huge. She was like an Amazon or something. Very big, broad shoulders, tall, but yet skinny, white skin. She had a big head and big black eyes. Very unique looking. And her head was bald except for a braid of long hair. Just one braid coming out the back of her head, and it was wrapped in ribbon. It was really unusual, and she was wearing like human looking clothing, like a skirt and a you know, a blouse that didn't fit her very well. It was just she was kind of skin and bones, you know, and it was just hanging over her. But anyway, she walked right up to me, and I was sitting in this chair, and she kneeled down in front of me, and her forehead was almost touching my forehead. And she put her right hand on my face and she looked deep into my eyes and she started to do this thing that they do. I got the impression that she was trying to make me go to sleep. But I was so awake and alert, and I've been doing exercises with my third eye, and she couldn't do it. She couldn't make me go to sleep. But I could feel her. I could feel her doing this inside of my head. She was doing something in there, like energetically, as she looked inside. It seemed to be connected to my third eye. And I let her do it, but I was so excited about being there in the moment that she couldn't make it happen. But I felt her trying to do it. It's like she was trying to break through some type of barrier or something, maybe behind my eyes. But I didn't allow it to happen because I was so excited to be there and to be so awake and aware. And she was this close to me. I was looking at her face. I put my hand on her face and I was feeling her skin and just looking so close at her eyes and her nose and her mouth. And I was amazed that her skin felt just as soft as mine. It felt just like my own skin, which was wild. And so when she could not do this thing, she could not make me go to sleep, she felt disappointed, and she put her hand down by her side and she stayed there like on one knee and allowed me to look at her really closely and feel her face and everything. And then after maybe a couple of minutes, she stood up and she looked like not just disappointed, but really like sad. And I didn't understand what was going on. And she started to walk away. And I jumped up and I said, "Hey, where is everybody?" Because I'm expecting to see a bunch of other star people. And she starts walking towards this other room, which was a dark room. She starts going into there and she's got her head hanging down. I'm like, "Hey, where's everybody?" And she says, "I am the last one." And she goes into this dark room. And I'm like, what does she mean she's the last one? But I didn't think about it too much because I was just excited to be awake and aware and on this ship or whatever. And these other two humans were sitting there. So I went back and I sat in the chair with the other humans. And the man next to me started to wake up. And I said, hey, there was a star lady in here. Did you see her? And he's like just gaining consciousness. He's kind of groggy. He says, yeah, I saw her. And I sat there and I was thinking about like what was happening. Why, like, what was she trying to do to me? And why was she not able to do it? And clearly she had done the same thing to the two sleeping humans next to me. But this guy was waking up. And I kind of had the impression that when she was doing that to me, I thought, well, maybe she's trying to help me go to sleep so I can make the transition of going back home into my physical body. That was kind of my impression, but I don't really know the answer to that because there I was awake and aware, and this guy was waking up. He was awake. And she made it sound like everyone else died or something, like all the other star people. And for some reason, she was not able to follow through with this thing that she usually does. And I've seen him doing it a lot. But for whatever reason, things seem to be shifting, like things are changing. Like even with the star people, the way that they do things is changing. And so, I woke up from that and had a lot to think about from that. Like, why was she doing this thing with my third eye? Was it to help me somehow, or was she doing it for her own benefit? I don't know. Maybe they do that to get energy from people, from people's pineal glands. I'm just thinking of different ideas, like what could it be? And it leads me to an experience that happened before this that was very similar with the whole third eye thing. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you about that too. This is about fighting the controllers. And when I talk about the controllers, they are the entities that are in control of Earth society right now. They have usurped the power from humanity. And for right now, they're in control, but not for much longer. So these controllers are like fallen angels, demons, possibly reptilians. You know, there's different entities involved, and I don't know the whole thing. You know, I don't know the whole answer. So I had an experience one night. It was before this one. I think it was back in maybe 2010. So went to sleep that night. I woke up. It started off in kind of a dream-like state, like a lucid dream. I was standing outside a restaurant, like the back door of the restaurant in this alleyway. And it was daytime, everything was well lit. And there were some employees standing at the back door, restaurant employees, and they got this shipment of meat. I think it was hamburger. And they opened the box, and it was so disgusting looking. The hamburger, it was foul. I mean, to me, it was poison. And I said, don't eat that. Don't bring that into the restaurant. It's dangerous and it's poisonous. They didn't listen to me. They just started playing around with it and poking it, and it was really gross. And so I walk around to the front of the restaurant and go in the front door and sit down at a table. This waitress comes out of the back room, and she's human. And something happened in my awareness where it was becoming cloudy, becoming kind of more dreamlike. But I noticed a shift in my awareness. And she asked me if I wanted a hamburger. And I said, sure. And she goes in the back and she brings out a hamburger. And I clearly not in my right mind. And I take a bite of this hamburger and I swallow it. And that woke me up like clear as day. I am awake. And I said, wait a minute. And I jumped up and I said, I just remembered I'm vegetarian. I was like, I'll just make myself a salad. So I start walking to the double doors of the kitchen of the restaurant. And the waitress jumps in front of me. She's like, no, 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 I'll get it for you. I was like, no, that's okay. You know, I'll just go back there and do it. So we both walk through these double doors, going into the back room of the restaurant. And I am wide awake now. Okay. And as I walk in, to my left, I see at the back of this room, it's kind of dark back there, 3 entities standing there, equally distant from each other, 3 of them. They are wearing black hooded robes with the hoods up. And I know that they are observing me. And so I let my gaze go right past them, so they didn't know that I saw them. Because I wanted that element of surprise on my side. And so I keep talking to this waitress, and she brings me over to this like a salad bar back there. And I realized that these entities back in the corner are controlling her. Like they're making her speak. And I'm trying to pick up, you know, energetically, who are these beings? And I realized that they are some of the controllers. And the one in the center seemed the most powerful. And I thought that he could very well be one of the presidents of the controllers, because there is a hierarchy with these demons. This is kind of off on a side tangent, but I'll just say it briefly, that in some of the ancient magical texts, for example, the Key of Solomon, he wrote a book about 72 demons. He gives their description, and they each have a magic symbol, a sigil. And anyway, I think that what I was seeing, these controllers might have been part of that group. And so the waitress is helping me get a salad, and I make sure that I'm just talking to her about, tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce. She's getting a salad together for me, and I'm very aware of these entities back there. So they are observing me, and they don't know that I can see them. So they start to draw me back there towards them. They magically appears another salad bar back in the far corner in the dark. So the waitress walks back there, and I'm like, okay. I follow her, and we get back there to the salad bar. I'm pretty close to these entities now. They still don't know that I'm aware of them. And they make this girl say to me, they're going to change our history, What do you think about that? And I look down at the floor and I say, I think that's a bad idea. And she says, why? And I say, well, then because we won't know who we are or where we come from. And at this point, the little bit of tension building up, and she hesitantly says, well, what do you think we should do about it? And I said, we should stop the controllers. And then it's like getting pretty tense. And she says, well, how can we do that? And I take that moment to step forward a couple of steps and just over, and I'm right there. I'm face to face with this being in the center. And I say out loud, well, maybe we should kill the president of the controllers who I'm looking at. And when I say these words, the vibration of the words coming out of my mouth is so strong, the hoods fly back off of their faces, all three of them. And I could see their faces clearly. And they look human. They look like old white men. They have long noses and kind of sickly, pale, white, grayish skin, really sickly looking. And they barely had any hair, it was real scraggly. And they were just shaking. They were trembling. And they were standing there, and I felt like so much in my power at that moment. And I felt like God really had my back. I felt really confident. And so I said, well, maybe, we could stop the controllers by killing the president of the controllers. And then they make her, it's the one in the center, they make her say, she starts whining. And she's like, well, how can we do that? And I take that moment to act, real cool. And I'm like, I just kind of look aside and I'm like, well, there's many different ways that we could do it. I'm like, well, perhaps we should poison him, because he just tried to poison me with this foul hamburger. Like, they were creating that scene. And that's why I was losing my conscious awareness. They were making that happen. And I really think they were trying to kill me. And so at this point, they are freaking terrified. And when I had turned my head away and take my eyes off of them just to show them that, hey, I don't even have to look at you. I'm more powerful than you. They took that moment to suck up together into one being with three heads. Clearly demonic, clearly one of these demons, clearly. And they were standing there. I looked back at them, and just crazy looking, one body with three heads, and they're basically crying, they're peeing their pants, they're shaking, like they can't believe it, they don't know what to do. And they say one more thing. They make the girl say, but if we kill the president, then who will? And I just cut him off right there, kind of stuck my nose up in the air, and I said, I have no more time for you. And I just immediately, like automatically, this door of white light is created in the far corner of the dark room. And I just walk out the door. And I got someone to tell you the story. I forgot a very important part of why I was telling you. The thing that the Star Lady was trying to do to me, looking into my eyes and working with my pineal gland or something, trying to make me sleep. Well, when I first approached these beings, and I spoke, and the vibration knocked their hoods off their faces. Then I immediately had to stand my ground. That was the moment. He was looking deep into my eyes, and I was looking deep into his eyes. And he was doing the same thing. Like, he was using energy to go back behind my eyes, like layer after layer, like he was breaking something down, like there's barriers there or something. But as he was doing that to me, I was doing that to him. And he broke down, I don't know, like 6 or 7 layers. He went back into my head, but I was able to go like 8 layers back into his. And I had him, was holding him energetically, and there was nothing he could do. That's why they were shaking and crying, because they didn't know what I was going to do. But I decided, I wasn't going to kill them or something like that, because I have the power of love, the power of creation on my side. And I feel like that's up to God to take care of that. And so I just kind of let it be at that. But it was incredible how he did this thing by looking into my eyes and somehow, trying to overpower me by going inside of my own mind. But I was able to overcome him because I've been working so much with my third eye and everything. I'm pretty strong in it. So he wasn't able to do that. But that's another incredible thing that's making me question everything I know.
Were you able to see the configuration of the man's skull, how big it was? Or
it looked human to me. They just looked like really old human men, white men with long crooked noses and barely any hair. But they weren't normal humans. I mean, they were like sickly looking, like grayish, kind of pale, pallid skin. Okay. And of course, when all this happened, they were like sweating and crying and, wailing. So it was horrible looking, but they had the appearance of old men. But these demons can take on different forms. They can appear as men or different types of animals. But when they sucked up together into one being with 3 heads, I was like, okay, yeah, you're a demon.
So Bonnie, you sent me a drawing regarding escaping the government. Can you talk about that one?
Yeah. So this was an incident where I was out of body and I was flying, and I was really having fun, flying across forests and plains and rivers and just really enjoying the landscape. And I came to this place in the woods. It was pretty deep in the woods. It's kind of a clearing. And there was a white building down there in the clearing, like a 1-story white, like a concrete building or something. And so it kind of, I got curious and I wanted to go check it out. So I went down there and I landed on the ground in front of this building. And then I realized it was a trap, because out of the front door came these government agents, and they were actually all around, like in the woods, and they surrounded me. There was a lot of them. And I really wasn't ready for that. And some of them, they had like walkie-talkies. They were talking to each other, and a couple of them had guns, and it wasn't a good situation for me to be in. But this kind of thing had happened to me before when I'm out, having fun, being out of body, exploring and stuff. Sometimes I end up being lured into something, that draws my curiosity. This was one of those times. And so I was standing there surrounded by these government agents, and some of them were talking to me. They're like, just stay there, just hold still. And I was like, no. And because it happened so quick and I just wasn't ready, and they were all around me, walking towards me. And like in this moment of desperation, I looked up to the sky and I just like blew a kiss and I said, help me. And this light, a blue light, actually shone down on me. There was like a saucer craft up in the sky. It was already there. It just appeared when I said, help me. And I got lifted up into this blue light and brought up onto the shift, and I into the ship, and I looked down and I saw the the government agents down there. They weren't very happy, and some were like, yeah. But anyway, my star people came and rescued me from that. And that's another thing that makes me question, because sometimes they put me into these fake scenarios where I was, it was a lesson to learn how to defend myself. And it makes me wonder, was this one of those times? Or was I really out of body exploring and government agents? And I had another experience similar to that, where a similar thing happened. I went to sleep that night and I woke up. I was in my backyard. Well, the backyard of the house that I grew up in with my parents. And I was pretty awake and aware, but I was just coming to consciousness, and I'm standing in the backyard, and I realized that there's two men, human men, chasing me. And I figure they're probably government agents like they usually are. And I'm talking about military trained psychics, and they really do come after contactees sometimes to get information. And I already had many, many years of dealing with them. So once again, a time when I just wasn't prepared for that. It was really sudden, and I started flying, because, as I said, not everybody can fly, and these men did not know how to fly. So I started flying, but I wasn't ready, and I didn't have much confidence in myself. It was kind of weak, and I was flying really slowly, going upward. Like, there was a big tree in the yard, and I wasn't even up to, I wasn't even above the tree yet. And I looked down, and luckily these men didn't know how to fly, but they were doing this thing where they were stretching their arms, and they were going to reach up and grab me with their arms. And I knew it was, they were going to have me pretty quick, and I didn't want that to happen. And once again, in this moment of sheer desperation, I'm just floating in midair, and I look up at the night sky and the stars, and I blow a kiss up there, and I say, please help me. Everything stops. The entire scene freezes. I'm still floating in midair. I'm still outside. There's the tree in the backyard, but the men were gone. They were gone. And as I'm looking up at the stars, every star shot out a white light from it, and it came down towards me and formed a silver orb floating right in front of my face, like about this big. So every star shot down a little bit of white light, and it formed this orb. And I thought, okay, that's the star people. And I saw my reflection in this silver orb, and I looked terrible. I mean, my hair was all messed up. My face was red. I was crying. I was pretty shaken up. And I just put my hands on this orb, and I said, please take me home. And the orb started moving, and I actually, like, my feet kind of lifted up behind me, almost like, like I'm flying, kind of like Superman, holding onto this silver orb. And it actually brought me across town to where I was currently living. And it brought me right to my house, and I went down into my bedroom, into my body, and I woke up. But that's, then again, like, okay, what was this? Was that the star people that had me in another fake scenario, and they were able to just stop it like that? Or the other question is, were those real government agents, and did the star people take them out? Did, like, what happened? There's so many questions in my mind, and I've had another experience like that. Now, this one I also sent you a picture of. This is where a star person actually grabs a government agent. That was great. So this happened earlier in my life. It's probably more like 20 years ago. So I went to sleep that night in my bed, and then I end up waking up in a place, in a room which was supposed to be some kind of a club, like they're having a party and they're playing music. And there's a whole bunch of humans in there and they're dancing and having fun. And I was, just coming to conscious awareness and like, how did I get here? And I'm looking around the room. And this fellow comes up to me and he said, hey, I'm working on this experiment. Do you want to help me out? I was like, sure. I really know how to get myself into trouble. So I go over to the side of the room. It's just kind of a more quiet area. And he's got this apparatus set up, which looks like a miniature telescope on a tripod, something like that. And he asked me to stand next to it. And he just has to put this little metal piece in my tooth. And somehow still I'm okay with it. I don't know. And so he starts putting this thing in my mouth. And I guess probably 5 minutes went by. And I'm just trying to be helpful, because he's friendly, whatever. But then I start feeling like little shocks from this metal piece, little shocks going into my mouth. I'm like, oh, I don't like this anymore. And so I told him that I wanted to stop. And he's like, you're almost done. You're doing so great. You're almost done. You're almost there. Just hang in there for another minute, And at that moment, I look over to my left and there was a long curtain that went from the ceiling to the floor. I don't know if there was a window back there, but there was a long curtain, thick, and you couldn't see through the curtain. I see some movement back there. And I know that, from being empathic and picking up feelings, there's a star person back there. So I don't know what's going on, but this star person has the intention of interacting with this man who I think now is probably a government agent and who's not allowing me to move. Now I can't move. Now I'm paralyzed and I'm feeling these shocks in my mouth. And so the star person behind the curtain makes like some loud noises over there, and the human man gets distracted. He wants to see what's going on behind the curtain. So he walks over there. This star person jumps out and grabs him. And the star person was really tall, like, I don't know, 10 foot tall, 12 foot tall. And he just grabbed this guy and pulled him behind the curtain. So at that moment, I was able to move again. And I pulled this metal piece right out of my mouth. And at first I was just going to throw it. And I thought, no, I'm going to hang on to this. And I stuck it in my back pocket. And I've done that so many times in these alternate reality experiences. I take information that the star people give me or stuff I've picked up from the government psychics, and I'll just keep it. I just stick it in my back pocket. And I ran, and I ran back through the area of this room, which was supposed to be a club, and they're having a party in there. And then I look around, I realize it's the inside of a barn. Like, we're inside of an old barn. And I'm like, I gotta get out of here. So I run through the double doors of the barn. I run outside, and it's nighttime, and I'm in a sleepy little town. And I just start running, and I'm trying to run home. Not really even know where I'm at yet. And I see this flashing on the ground, like this light. It's almost like there's lightning or like a strobe light or something that's creating this flashing light. And I look up in the sky and I see a giant eyeball. And it's just floating up there, and the light is pulsing from this eyeball. Now, I've seen this eyeball probably 3 or 4 times in my life. The first time I saw it, I was probably 20 years old. And it was outside at night. I was out of body, and it was above the treetops. And it had chased away some star people that I was interacting with, some very unique star people. And it had chased them away. They were really frightened of it. And I got the impression that this eyeball was somehow related to like the Illuminati, the all-seeing eye. Yeah. And it felt very powerful to me. And I stood there at that time, when I was 20, and I stared up at this eyeball and kind of defiantly, and I felt like it was something that was physical and non-physical and very in-depth and had a lot of entities and people involved with it. But I also felt like I was very powerful myself, and I felt like I was on equal footing with this eyeball thing. So yeah, it was really weird the first time I saw it, but this more recent time, you know, I'd already seen it a couple of times. I ended up running away from that barn and running through this sleepy town, and I somehow just woke up in my bed and wrote this all down. So that, you know, once again makes me wonder about the star people and the fake scenarios, or was it real? And, you know, he jumps out from behind a curtain and grabs this military agent. You know, it's kind of confusing. It's just, I'm really questioning things like, what is going on here? Like, what is reality? Because for me, like, this is real while I'm in the physical world, and it's also real for me when I'm not in the physical body, and everything kind of flows together in this, you know, this flow of consciousness I'm talking about. So what powers do these star people have, and are they the watchers? Are they like maintenance for the Earth system? And because they seem to be able to change things and really influence our lives. I know they've really, really heavily influenced my life, and probably, you know, coerced me into making a lot of decisions. And kind of in a way, sometimes I feel like I don't even have free will, really, because
Yeah, but what's the point of all this? All the you know, the manipulation. Do they see us as like we're being harvested for the energy? What's the point of it all? It's complicated.
yeah, there's so many different factions involved. You know, there's so many different types of star people. Some of them are friendly and helpful, some of them are not. Some of them, I'm sure, just want to, you know, suck the life energy out of us. Most reptilians are that way. You know, they can hook right into our chakra system and feed off of fear and lower vibrational, you know, emotions and energy, and they can possess people. So there's just so much to think about, so much going on. I've got other experiences that I can talk about. The gray attack is one of them.
Okay.
Gray attack. I'd seen grays many times. Sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're not. You know, sometimes they're very helpful, but there's different types of grays also. So this event happened in 2015. I, as usual, went to sleep and went out of body to what I call the alternate reality. And I was outside of my house. It was actually here in Uruguay. And my neighbor walked over from across the street. And I knew it wasn't him from his energy. I could tell it wasn't really him. And so I just immediately started flying. I flew up into the sky, and at this time feeling very confident and with my flying skill. And he flew up in the air next to me. I'm like, okay, this is definitely not my neighbor. And then 3 other men joined him, and they were surrounding me in the air. They were all floating in midair with me between them. And I didn't know what to do. So I tried this brand new thing. And that's another thing. Every time I need to defend myself, I don't even know what's going to happen. It's not like I plan it or anything. It's different every time. And so what I did this time was I spun really fast in a really tight circle, still in the center of these 4 humans. And when I did this, I created a vortex of energy, kind of like a tornado. And I bumped into one of them. And when I did, I saw that he was a gray. I saw his true form. And then I could see all of them. All 4 of them were grays. And I don't know what their intention was. It was not good. They weren't very happy with me for some reason. And so I didn't really know what I was doing. I just spun in this circle and created this vortex. And then I somehow jumped into their world, like their frequency with them. So the group of us floating in the air, we jumped from, the alternate reality in the physical to their frequency. And as soon as we got there, I knew that was a mistake, because all I could see was white, because I didn't, I'm not in the same frequency as them, and I can't really perceive what's there in their world. It just looked all white to me. And I could also feel, the millions and millions of other grays that were going to come join their friends, I'm sure. So I was like, I got to get out of here. So just using, my third eye and mental focus, I snap us back into the physical, the alternate reality of the physical, I guess you'd say, into my world. And this pattern played out 8 times. It was like being caught on a merry-go-round or something that would not stop. So it was like automatically playing out. I kept going in a vortex and bumping into the same gray. Then we jump into their world. Then we jump back. The same thing kept playing out 8 times. I was like, this has got to stop. And they were getting really angry. And I was able to just focus on myself and my body, going back to my physical body, and I brought myself back there. So that was the gray attack that happened in 2015.
It's so complicated, really.
It really is complicated. And yeah, the more I experience, the more complicated it becomes. It just brings up, it's like a domino effect, like one question after another.
It reminds me of an event that happened to me, I think last year, and this is why I have trouble putting my finger on what's real, what's not, because when you get out of that dream, you think to yourself, well, that's way too. I couldn't invent this type of stuff. So I was dreaming. I was with my brother, and we're looking towards the sky. And my brother he's not an experiencer, and we're looking at this black dot coming towards us. And I realized it's like a 3D black pyramid, and like a 6-7 pointed star pyramid, but like star. But then that black star comes towards us, and it morphs into a gray. And the gray says to me that I had an important mission. And as soon as he says that, the event, the scenario moves from him to in front of a male and a female, both human, probably military or like governmental. They're debriefing me nonstop, and they're asking me, "What did the gray say to you? What did the gray say to you?" Nonstop. And I said, "The gray said that I had an important mission, and that's it." And they're so pissed after that. They get up, and I wake up the next morning, and I thought, "Wow, that was weird." So I go online and I start Googling 3D black pyramid, something like that. And it turns out to be a Merkabah. And
Right.
and how they represent the Merkabah, they describe it, was like a sort of light body spirit type of vessel. So what I saw was the gray's sort of light body vessel that transformed into a Merkabah that flew towards me, morphed into a gray. And that's what I saw. So like, how on earth would I invent something like that if it didn't really happen?
Yeah, that's definitely real. So I got a story to tell you now. This was a gray, and he showed me the Merkabah, this energy field of white light around our bodies. That's supposed to be what we travel in. And it's just like you described it. It's like a right side up pyramid and upside down pyramid, and they're together and they spin. And this is around our bodies. So this gray, one time he showed me, he was holding it in his hand like this, the Merkabah symbol, and it was shaking back and forth like this. And above it was what looked like the sun shining down over the moon and making like a shadow, like a pyramid-like shadow. And the spinning vortex coming down over the Merkabah, making it shake. And he was showing me something that was going to happen, like very soon. And it made me feel like it was some type of DNA activation event or something like that. Over the years, different types of star people have shown me the symbolism of what appears to be the sun and the moon in the sky, and an event that happens. And I've drawn out little pictures of this. It happened to me probably like 15 times. And they're like trying to bring me a message about this. It's something that will happen, I guess, in the sky, but it's related to us and our DNA. And the star people actually told me a long time ago that during the shift, they said there's a clear sign that you can watch for. They talked about this shift in consciousness that's going to happen. They said you're gonna know, because for 3 days something weird's going to happen with the sun. So what they showed me was the first day, the sun comes up late, like it doesn't come up till 11 a.m. So that's pretty noticeable. And then it only stayed up, for, I don't know, 6 hours, and then it went down. So that's very noticeable. Everybody could see that. Then the second day, the sun came up even later and was only up for, 3 hours maybe. And then the third day, it came up and then set, like just very fast. And so clearly something was happening with the way this Earth system works. And it could be because of a reset, and it could be because of a magnetic change, electromagnetic change within the Earth plane and the whole Earth system. And this is how we also shift, because we are electromagnetic beings. So this is everything, the Earth and us shifting at the same time. So this 3 days happens with the sun, and then the moon turns blood red. And I watched this happen with the moon also at night. There were like 3 waves of red, like 3 different nights that came across the moon. And on the last night, the moon actually turned white again. And I was like, phew, okay, it'll go back to normal. But then, no, then it morphs into a crystalline structure. Like I'm looking at a new dimension of the moon, and it looks like a huge crystal, like a multifaceted crystal with all these different sides. And it's just like floating there in the air. And it was very bizarre to see that. But yeah, they showed me that. It was quite a long time ago. They showed me that. So maybe that is, something. If I see the sun coming up, late one day, I'm going to be like, okay, get ready.
Will that happen in our lifetime?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because all the preparations they've done with me was training for the shift that's going to happen. Clearly, yes, it's happening. It's kind of a gradual thing. It's already happening, but there's a moment, there's a moment when everything just flips over into this new frequency. And I think it's, what some people call the new Earth. It's just a higher level of awareness for us. It's a good thing, and will help us to remember who we really are as eternal spiritual beings, and we'll remember our true power, and many things will become clear to us, will be explained instantly.
Now let's talk about your 2 books. Now, how could, if people would like to purchase your books, I think they have to go directly to your website.
Yeah. My website is alienabductionhelp.com. And I have 2 books, Journey with the Star People and The Shift. So Journey with the Star People is basically like the first half of my life, and The Shift is the second half of my life. It's like my spiritual journey, which I'm telling to everybody, and I'm sharing it because this is important, and it's not just me it's happening to. It's all the contactees and the abductees who are aware of it, plus people who aren't really even consciously aware. but a lot of, millions and millions of people are affected by these experiences. And so the preparation for this shift, the shifting frequencies, has really been the main reason for all of this training with me. I mean, there were a lot of steps that I had to go through. The Star People School, I talk about that in the first book, Journey with the Star People. The second book, The Shift, is really, it's a continuation. It's kind of like my second part of my training, which was more like college, and graduating from that. And then, at this point, the Star People, I don't see them very much at all. I think they're just waiting now, or they're off helping other people prepare. But for me, it's kind of like a waiting game now. I'm just doing it by myself, working with my third eye and doing everything I can to, better myself as a person, and just waiting for this shift to happen. And I can see it happening now. You could see the craziness in the world, and half the people are asleep. They're going to go down with the matrix, and a minority of us are going to shift up into a higher level of awareness.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the days are crazy. Let's call it a day. And so thank you so much for coming on today. I had loads of fun. I'm so grateful that you had the chance to come on today and share with everyone. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
And to those who had the chance of watching today's interview, hope you enjoyed it. I'm your host, Mr. Gray. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So take care, everyone. Bye. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Gray, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.